I'm totally honoured you would even think of me. But Gray is 105 years old. Am I really the right person for the job? Because I just went into the interview going, I'm just going to go for this because the one thing I'm really excited about is it scares me that means it's an opportunity for growth.
An opening up of a dream position led her to uproot to the UK, where she became a champion for women, driving forward true change.
I was walking along Commercial Road. A friend of mine who was Chief Creative Officer at Digitas drove past in a car and stopped and went, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I went, "I'm fine, I've just got this job offer." And he went, "Do you want to come and work with me instead?" And I went...
Yourself and your MD were the first women to go on maternity leave in the company's history.
Yeah, I remember having morning sickness or, in really important client meetings and having to hide how sick I was feeling and then running to the bathroom and being sick and coming back going, I don't even know how to approach this. Focus on what you're good at and make it shine like the sun so that no one sees the stuff that you're not good at, because the stuff you're not good at is going to be someone else's sun. So much better to focus on what you're good at.
Greetings, I'm Ashley Samuels Mackenzie.
And I'm Charles Parkinson.
And welcome to How I Became,
where we unveil the unscripted journeys of inspirational figures.
Hi, I'm Laura JB, and this is how I became President and Chief Creative Officer at Grey UK and founder of She Says, OK and Can't Festival.
Outsiders, misfits, and people outside the norm. This guest's story starts in the land of Australia, in Canberra, where she was born. Growing up in Sydney, she had no care to conform to the norms of society, including being the one girl in a footballing league of boys. She's certainly not afraid of notoriety. An opening up of a dream position led her to uproot to the UK, where she became a champion for women, driving forward true change. She's involved in so many brands, who knows where to start. Welcoming founder of She Says, OK, Can't Festival, and President and Chief Creative Officer at Grey, Laura Jordan Bambach.
That was banging, thank you.
Welcome.
So, this is the story of how you got to where you are.
Yep.
The entrepreneurial endeavours, and amazing stories that we'll get into. But to begin with, I will introduce you properly. You've twice been named one of Britain's most influential people within Debrett's 500 annual list. You were ranked number 1 on the Drums Digerati list of the top 100 most influential digital individuals in the UK, 2014. The Guardian has called you a digital female icon. You were recognised as one of BBC's 100 Women of 2017 and awarded an honorary doctorate for your services to graphic design from the University of Arts London. In 2007, we'll talk about this. She Says, you co-founded that with Alessandra Lariu, which is a global mentoring and network group that encourages women to pursue careers in digital and marketing with over 40,000 members, 43 cities worldwide. Won 6 Cannes Lines, 9 D&ADs, and you're a trained taxidermist.
Yeah.
To finish.
Yeah. And I would say absolutely. And I would say probably those stats, we've got about 90,000 members now, I think, in She Says. So it is growing.
Look at that. More than double.
Still growing. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So we'll hear the story of that as well. It's a very impressive career and life of someone who sees problems in the world and does something about it.
Yeah.
So we're going to hear all the stories of how you did that. But first, tell us a little bit about Grey. For those who don't know, this is the company you're currently at.
Yep.
President, Chief Creative Officer. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Grey is the oldest advertising agency in the world. It's 105 years old. It's got a beautiful origin story of its own, actually. It was set up by 2 teenagers in New York who were Jewish and couldn't get any work because they were Jewish. So they decided to set up their own agency working for companies that were friends of the family and people that they knew. And it's named Grey because actually they felt like they would get so much prejudice with their Jewish surnames that they named it after the colour of the wall in the agency, hence Grey. So I'm really proud to be working there. I think we had the first ever creative female as well in, I don't want to say the date, but early 1920s, I think, who was a copywriter. And it's always had a history of kind of moving and changing with the times, and kind of supporting diversity and inclusion for a really long time, which is obviously something incredibly close to my heart and my own personal story. So we're now 200 odd people in London, but we're still all over the world. So I think there are 32 studios around the world. And I'm very lucky to be running the UK office.
Cool.
Yeah.
And clients like Pringles.
Yeah, so we do a lot of work for Pringles, who are just an absolute delight. And we actually just won 2 golds at one show this week for work that we did with them.
They still talk about pop. You just can't stop.
No, that's actually weirdly, it's long gone, but it's in everyone's memory. So, but the pop is still very, very important.
Cool.
The pop is important. So, they're absolutely fantastic. We do a lot of work with HSBC, work with Halion, work with a lot of charity clients like Peter, for example, work with Vodafone in Ireland, who are, again, beautiful clients, Bank of Ireland. We've got, we're a big agency, so we work across a huge number of kind of sectors and what have you, a lot of Volvo, a lot of P&G.
I feel like we've got to that point where you're doing like an awards thank you, and you feel like...
I know, I'm like, who have I left out?
I'm going to say everyone now.
I know. I feel so bad because, honestly, the clients that we've got are really wonderful, but you always have kind of special people, I think. And I think, for me, the clients at Pringles are just so collaborative, and yeah, I love them.
The question is, how did you get to this position? And we will go back in time.
Yeah.
We're just going to start the podcast there.
Yeah.
But we'll go back in time to Canberra, Australia.
Yes.
Where everything began.
Mm-hmm.
You described yourself as feeling like an outsider.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
I've never felt like I fitted in as part of the usual narrative. I think, in any culture or in any society, there is a narrative that you're supposed to follow throughout your life, whether as a narrative based on your gender or based on your skill set or based on your family circumstances. And I've always just not quite fit into that box. So, going back to, I think Canberra for me, which was sort of the first 8 years or so of my life, was actually a really wonderful, really interesting time. It's probably no one's been. I think it's the least exciting capital city in the world. I shouldn't say that because Canberra's actually quite buzzing now. But when I was younger, like the entire place is designed by one architect, right? So the entire city is, is planned, and it's, I don't know whether anyone knows the history of Canberra, but it's a false capital in the way that Brasilia is a false capital. So at the Federation of Australia, when all the states were coming together, Victoria refused to join the rest of Australia to become a country if Sydney became the capital. So they built a whole new territory, the Australian Capital Territory, and built Canberra in the centre of that, and that became the capital to allow everyone to come together and form a country, which is only 100 and something years, early 100 years old, maybe 110 years old or something when that happened. So it's a very new place.
Younger than this building.
Yeah, everything is new. Everything is really well town planned. And the only people really living there, not entirely, but are military or political. So it's the political capital. And because of that, it's very orderly, it's very clean. The schools are really, my experience anyway, very well organised and very well planned. And there's sort of a high level of achievement in the, state school system and all of those kinds of things. So it was a very easy place to grow up as a young kid. I think as you get older, I think it also used to have anyway, the biggest Class A drug problem in the country. It's the only place where porn is still illegal and that you can buy fireworks. So it's a weird kind of place that is both the light and the dark, I think, of Australia.
And at that time, so you had some interesting experiences there. One of those, you were, as Ash mentioned in the poem, really into football.
Yeah.
Played in the football team.
Yeah.
Having a great time. And then they go, sorry.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I have been a football fan my entire life.
Is this the football as we call it in England? Or
yeah, football, so soccer. I'm being untrue to my Australian roots at soccer. But football, as we call it here, and there used to be no Australian league. And so if you wanted to follow a football team, you watched what used to be called First Division, which is now the Premier League. And as a little girl, which is why I'm a lifelong Crystal Palace supporter, Crystal Palace is like Barbie's castle, right? You're like, oh my God, it's a palace made of crystal. So I became a huge Crystal Palace fan.
Because of the name? Because
I thought
Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
So I bet you were sad when you went there and discovered.
Oh, you know what? But we've got heart here. It's not the Crystal Palace I expected, but I think it's the Crystal Palace I wanted.
Yeah, nice. Place.
So it was super into it, and there was no way of a girl at that time playing football. There were no female clubs. There were only boys clubs. And my parents have always been amazingly supportive of kind of supporting the fact that I wanted to do things that are a bit different. So, I wanted to join the Scouts, not the Girl Guides. And they actually went to the local council and fought for me to be part of the Scouts, and they didn't win. But it was really great to know they were there and they had my back and that they were going to try to make it happen for me. And the same with football. So my parents were like, okay, you're going to go play with the boys. So I joined a football team, and until I was 16, I played in an entire boys division.
What did the other guys think?
For my teammates, I was just one of the team. An amazing coach as well, who was a woman who was also massively supportive. I think as you get older, maybe it's a bit, I used to cop a lot of flack, but, I think I was hopefully good enough to remained on the team.
What position did you play?
Either left back or left half. Yeah, I'm a lefty.
Still play today? Ever?
No, you know what? I used to play about 3 times a week until I moved here, actually. And then I came here and I just didn't know how to orient myself and where to find a team at that point. But I used to play in my school team as well, which was the female team. And weirdly, my school was in a all-boys league in terms of playing the other schools. So we would always only play boys' teams. We used to have some really good moves, actually, to freak the boys out when I was a teenager.
Sounds fun. So you, before, obviously, we'll get to moving to the UK later, but eventually you moved to Sydney.
So I came up to Sydney in primary school, and that was a real shock because, as I said, in Canberra, everything is like ordered and really well planned, and I'd say like quite gentle in a way. And then Sydney is a massive, bustling metropolis. And I remember actually going home to my mum after the first day of school, and she said, "How was school?" And I said, it's so much easier in the classroom, but it's so much harder in the playground. And again, I just didn't feel like I fitted for whatever reason. I look at, and I did back then as well, look at particularly, the girls that I was supposed to be kind of hanging out with and the conversations I was supposed to be having with them and the way I was supposed to dress and how I was supposed to care about my hair. And it still is completely alien to me, but it was so alien to me then. I'm like, I don't know how to perform to be you, and I don't know how to like the things that you like, and I don't know how to be interested in the things that you're interested in. I was interested in, like I said, football, reading, maths. I was really into maths. So I ended up finding my own little kind of group, I guess, of misfits at primary school, and we were kind of really close. But we would go off and we'd write novels together and kind of then, play those novels out. I would spend all my time in the library. I'd get to school really early and just sit in the library and read books. And after school, I'd go to the library and read until the library closed. So I just wasn't kind of part of whatever it was that was going on. Boys, I don't know, not interested. I don't understand it, what's going on. So it's always been like a little bit of a sitting in my own little place somehow, I guess.
Which is a theme that kind of continues throughout your life. And then fast forwarding a little bit to you go to study at university.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that go?
Yeah, so I went to I'm going to sound like a wanker, But I went to like this nerd school, right? So a grammar school in Sydney, and you take a bunch of tests, and they take the top 120 people in the year across the state, and they get a spot at this high school. So in my year, it happened to be there were 100 boys in my year and 20 girls, because that's how the tests ended up that year. So everyone expected me to go off and to do something really nerdy, like to follow maths or to follow science, but my love was really art. And so when I went to university, I decided to go to art school, which was a little bit of a shock to my parents, but again, they like got behind it and went, okay, you're going to art school. Are you sure you don't want to do architecture or product design or, industrial design, something that involves maths as well? I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So I went off to art school, and within, I started in painting, and within the first 12 weeks of being there, I realized painting wasn't for me. And again, I guess it's the story of my life. The way they taught painting, which I now realize is a really good way to teach painting, is teaching all the basics first. So first 12 weeks, we had a sphere, a cube, and a pyramid, all painted white on a white plinth. So you have to paint it perfectly in black and white, and then in a warm colour in white, and then in a cool colour in white, and then in a warm and a cool colour in white. And then you have to paint it in realistic colours. And that is your first 3 months at art school. So by the end of it, I'm like, fuck this. And so I painted it. I painted it the way I wanted to paint it, which is all of these, contrasting colours, and, sort of went to town. And my teacher, bless him, like, he was going kind of through after he marked everything, and he just pulled mine out and went, I see we have a colourist amongst us, in this really kind of disparaging tone. And I just thought, like, no, I can't continue doing this for another 3 years. So I was doing photography as a minor, and it's the only thing I could transfer into without losing credit points. So I thought I'll transfer into photography. Digital media sat in photography at the time because I didn't know where to put it. So I did the traditional photography course, but got more and more into doing the computing side of things. So that became my major. And there were only 2 of us in my year doing digital media. So we had these amazing labs. We had amazing teachers, phenomenal artists, right at the beginning, I guess, of digital art. And just me and this guy, Pierre Stocks, hanging out in the lab together, making stuff. But, it's where I learned HyperCard, which turned into HTML. It's where I learned Director and learned to animate. I learned about sound. I learned about illustration and, kind of forged my own little path, I guess.
So you're just, immersed in this new world of digital media, teaching yourself coding, digital, all aspects.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is just after this is when the Cyber Feminist magazine comes in.
Exactly. So one of the reasons I decided to go to art school in the first place is there's an amazing female cyber feminist collective who no longer exists called VNS Matrix. And when I was in year 11, I was driving my car because I grew up kind of on the outskirts of Sydney on a small, not really a farm, but on an acreage out in the middle of nowhere. I was driving into town and I looked up and there was this big billboard, and it was one of their artworks, and it was VNS Matrix, the clitoris is a direct line to the matrix. And I thought that, wow, I want to do that. So, I was really interested in it. And then Geek Girl happened while I was in my first couple of years of university, and it was the world's first cyber feminist hyperzine. What that means is it was a website and a magazine, which was totally revolutionary at the time. I think we were in Wired as one of the top 20 websites in the world, which is hilarious now that they used to go, these are the top 20 websites in the whole world. But
in your early 20s or late teenagers working on one of the top 20 websites in the world.
Yeah, and I found a place where I could use my my maths and my art to do really exciting things, because coding came really easily to me. How I fell into Geek Girl is I'd been to their launch. I say they. It was founded by this woman, Rosie Cross, and it was really her. And she's a journalist, and I was completely inspired by what she was writing about. No one else was talking about the fact that there were no women in technology at the time. when you went online into these early spaces, you had to pretend to be male, because if you presented as a woman, you would just get sexual harassment like nothing else. So so she was the first person to really find kind of mentors and heroines of digital around the world and interview them and talk to them about their lives and what they were doing. And so then part of what I used to do to put myself through university, as well as being a taxidermist, was I used to take secondhand clothes and mend them and sell them at markets. And I was at this market called Glebe Market, and Rosie had a table there, and she had she had copies of the magazine, all these amazing stickers like "Girls Need Modems" and "Put Down Your Pony and Pick Up a Computer," which I think is brilliant. And so I went to, buy some of her things and talk to her about it. And I've got a big Escher tattoo on my stomach of a web. It's like spiders and scorpions intertwined into a web. And so she saw it, went, "Oh, brilliant, web, World Wide Web. Can I put it on the next issue of the magazine?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then she called and said, "The photographer's dropped out. Not going to be able to do it. Sorry." And I said, "Well, I do photography at uni. I could take a picture of my stomach," which I did. And then she called and said, "The person doing the website and the magazine, the designer, has dropped out, so we're not going to do this issue." And I went, "Well, I can do that." Not knowing actually that you use things like InDesign to design magazines, not Photoshop. So I did the whole thing in Photoshop, and cut and coded the website. And at that time, there was no software to make websites. You had to do it all by hand in Notepad and then copy the code over and then check the code in a browser and what have you. And she just went, "Look, that's brilliant. Anything you learn how to do, I'll give you a job how to do it." And that's how I ended up working with Geek Girl for many, many years.
Love that. What a story.
Yeah. Some say we make our own luck by being ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And just going, yeah, I think I can do that.
What do you think the lesson in the story is, Sash?
Be ready. I think if you've got a certain set of wants from what you're doing, or a certain set of interests, if they're really that prominent in your mind, I'm always a believer that you'll find the thing that you're meant to find at the right time.
Yeah, I think so too.
The next real chapter seems to be to do with Terra Planet.
Oh God, yes. Oh, that's brilliant. You have done your research. I'll tell you a little bit about what was going on behind the scenes. I hope I don't jump the gun with you. But so behind the scenes, I was forming an artist collective with the people that I was at university with. We took out a lease on an abandoned warehouse floor. It was totally empty. It was trashed. We built our own walls. We built our own rooms, and we built a gallery in the middle.
It's all in Sydney.
It was all in Sydney. The warehouse was called Imperial Slacks, so we called ourselves the Imperial Slackers. A lot of them have gone on to be quite famous artists and represented Australia at the Biennale and all sorts of things that I'm enormously proud of. But they were like my second family. So amazing people, brilliant artists. We were all very passionate about queer art and outsider art and really pushing the boundaries of what art was, I guess. So all of that was going on. And I was sick of working in shops and sick of doing all sorts of different things. So I realized that what I was doing is my art I could make money out of because no one else knew how to code. So I set up my own business called Joystick Digital Media. And myself and sometimes my brother, who's a phenomenal coder, we just basically go into an advertising agency for 3 days and cut and code everything and get their stuff. There would literally be questions like a InDesign file of a form going, how does that go onto the internet? And then what happens with the information when you put it in? And it's like, okay, you need a database, so we'll write you a database, or you need this and we'll write you that.
So you're like 21, 22 at this stage?
Yeah, something like that.
It sounds like you're doing consultancy for...
Yeah, kind of. I learned a lot about running a business and contracts and getting things right and getting things wrong back then. So this was the business that I started when I was in the warehouse, and that enabled me to get the job at Terra Planet. And Terra Planet was kind of the equivalent of EMAP in a way. It was a stable of magazines, really interesting ones. So there was a magazine called Juice, which is was, like the Aussie Rolling Stone. There was an amazing architecture magazine, amazing design magazine. It's the equivalent of like OK magazine, like all of these things within the one place. And I was hired as the creative director to come in and to help them move all of their print content online and like understand what digital publishing even was and how you could create a business that allowed people access to content online whilst still selling paper magazines. And, you know, all of these things started happening, like music. I mean, I say music streaming. It wasn't really music streaming, but, you know, being able to embed a track on a website and then who owns the digital rights, and all of this was like so new. So help them navigate that for quite a while, and it was an absolute ball, actually.
And is this where you started to you had a dream job?
Yeah.
Dream role that you wanted, and it sort of started to form here?
Yeah, so I, as well as working at TerraPlanet, because I was only one of two people who'd done digital media as my bachelor degree, I was asked to write the bachelor degree in digital media because they realised it couldn't sit in photography anymore. So over the summer, I helped them write the first year of that course. And then,
I mean, how many people do a degree and then get asked, oh, do you mind coming back and
you know what,
writing another one?
It was so much fun because I'm like, what is all the cool that I can like impart on these people who are only a couple of years younger than me?
That must have been an amazing degree to do. For whoever went through that, I'd love to hear.
Because I taught most of it as well because there wasn't anyone to teach it. So I like wrote it, taught it. So I feel,
at this point that like, man, life's going great. I am flying. People seem to want to know about what I like, and I seem to be at the cutting edge of this thing. Like, how did it?
You know what? I never think about life in that way at all. I just think about what I'm experiencing, how exciting it is, how much I want to do like in that case, like a good job for the students and give them something that they will have never experienced before. I wasn't thinking about like everyone thinks I'm doing a great job or wow, I can't believe I'm here. It just seemed like a really natural thing when they said, do you want to write the degree? I'll go, yeah, like, of course I'm going to write the degree. And pulled in really interesting people also that I knew to kind of, help contribute to the degree. So I was working at TerraPlanet and I was teaching this course. And as part of this course, they would get international speakers in. And so I was sitting in the audience watching this international speaker called Simon Waterfall, who is a dear kind of friend and mentor of mine now. And he was running the coolest digital agency in the world at the time called Deep End. They had offices all over the world. They were all in their 20s. He was like a real, I don't know, like boundary breaker, blue mohawk. He was always in a wedding dress or in a kilt. Brilliant fun, like huge amounts of heart, and just the work was wildly good. So I went up to him afterwards and said, I really want to work for your agency, because he was opening in Sydney. And he said to me, like, show me your portfolio, which I did. And I hadn't been trained in design or anything. I really wanted to be a designer. I wanted to be a designer at his agency. And he said, look, I only hire like the best designers in the world. And you're not a trained designer. And even though I was doing like lots of design and I could build things and what have you, so he's like, go and learn about this stuff, like learn a bit more about typography, learn about this, whatever. I'll be back in 3 months because I'm setting up the agency, come and see me again. And one of the things I'm most thankful of in my career actually is that there have been people who've seen something in me that I haven't seen in myself. I'd say Rosie is one of them. Simon was one of them. So, I would go and see him, meet up with him wherever, like in a pub, every time he came to Sydney. Portfolio still not good enough. And then finally he went, basically your portfolio is still not good enough because I only hire the best designers in the world.
After how long?
But you're quite, I don't know, probably, I don't know, maybe it could be a year. It seems like longer than a year, but it was probably a year.
So a whole year of you'd meet him. He'd be like, I still want to work for you. And he'd be like, still need to learn some stuff. You go back for 3 months, come back. And you were just determined.
Yeah. And so then he said, look, finally, I've got a job as a producer. do you want to work as a producer? And I went, absolutely. So I left Terraplanet, went to work there as a producer. And of course, then I was working alongside the best designers in the world, and I learned so much.
Excellent.
You know, everything I've learned has been on the job. But that was really, really phenomenal. And then, probably 18 months after that, 18 months after that, he gave me a call and went, I've got a job for you as a designer, but it's in London. It's a junior designer. You'll be on 12 grand a year. Do you want to come? And I'm like, absolutely. So I dropped everything and moved over.
Did you ever have it in your mind that you would move to the UK or London?
No, never. Absolutely never.
Do you remember the moment he told you that? What did you think? Were you like...
I was just like, pack up my house, let's go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you start your life in the UK.
Yeah.
How was the first period? What was it like?
I found it really weird, actually. So I'd spent a lot of time in Japan. I did like sort of months at a time in Japan doing various things like teaching at a university there. That I expected to be really, really different. And it was like the culture is different, the language is different, and everything is different. And because you expect it, you're kind of open to it. When I moved to the UK, I thought everything would be the same as Australia because, we're all your convicts, right? We stole all your bread. But the little things just really knocked me for six. And I think the thing that knocked me the most is, in London anyway, I would say if you're a Geordie, ignore this because Geordie's brilliant and very direct. But in London, like, no one says what they think. Everything is coded. There are ways of saying stuff that are very, very clear to people who come from the south of England or the south of the UK, that make no sense to anyone else. So, someone would give me feedback on my work, and in Sydney, my creative director would go, "Sorry, mate, your work's shit. Do it again." Here, there would be all of this like intrigue, like, it's a bit, and maybe this thing here is a bit interesting. And what they meant was the work is shit. Do it again. But because I never said it, I never did it, and I kind of learnt the hard way how to kind of adapt to the way people talk. I would also always be giving my numbers out to people who asked me whether I wanted to go for a coffee because I thought, this is brilliant. I'm making new friends. I need to realise that in Londonese, that means, do you want to shag? And then he'd end up going, oh my God, I've given someone my number, but that's not what I want. I actually just want a coffee. And like, So it took me a while to get my head around. Obviously, all Brits like talking about the weather. The weather is completely different. There's so much that's different that I didn't expect.
And then, so you're kind of, getting used to this whole new world and culture and ways.
Yeah.
And you'd been used to a guy saying to you for 12 months, your work's crap, or you need to learn more, do it again. All these kind of mixed learnings. But you did make progress. You spent two years there.
Yeah, and not even. I was kind of there until the .com crash in, I want to say maybe 2002, just before the .com, or when the .com crash was happening. Was it 2001? Thank you. Yeah, that would be it. 2001. So I kind of moved over here, and then I realised that something was up in the industry. I just felt that something wasn't right. And I could see the stress around the deep end offices and the tension, and I'd been promised a pay rise and I hadn't got a pay rise, and I was thinking,
were you still on 12 grand?
Yeah. What's going on? So then I thought, I think I'd better look for a new job. And I didn't know what was coming, but I knew something was coming. And actually I found a job at this amazing agency called Lateral, and then probably 6 weeks after I had left, the entire business crumbled. So everyone was called into a room one day and told, the agency is no more. You can't go back to your desk because the people coming to sell the computers are coming to take everything. It was like that. It was that full on. I mean, the .com crash put a lot of people out of work all over the world, all like within the space of a couple of months. But I was incredibly lucky in that I had just found this new place, Lateral, which is still, they're still brilliant friends. And it was the maddest experience to work in this agency that I'd ever had, because they were less an agency and more like an anarchist collective, I would say. There were a lot of people, a lot of co-founders, all with different roles. It was very alternative. They had this brilliant, which I still think is brilliant. If we were going to take on a new client, everyone in the agency would be asked, is this a client we want to take on? And we would have a discussion about it. And they purposefully kept themselves small. So if it meant hiring another 10 people to take on a new client, they wouldn't do it. It was like this small, really tight team, a lot of people in there who were like incredibly creative and almost like artists, I would say. Ridiculous people and ridiculous behavior, and all just beautiful. Like beautiful people. Our business cards, you didn't have a job title when you were there. You got to choose your own job title, and it had to be Lateral something. So I was Lateral Tinker. But my friend, who's still one of my best friends, Elvin, who came in as an account person, was Lateral Corporate Whore. And that was allowed on her card, which I thought was brilliant.
Is there anything from that time there that you learned that you still kind of use today?
Yeah, look, I learned a lot, because they really put you in the deep end and let you like sink or swim a lot of the time. So I think I found my voice there. I learned to give feedback, and I learned that if I spotted something in the work and I didn't speak up about it, it was my responsibility then if we were on the hook and the work wasn't good enough, and it was because of that thing. I learned to kind of trust the fact that I could actually spot stuff that was good. I learned a lot about how to manage people, and also how not to manage people. I mean, it was a really formative time in my life, and enabled me then to kind of go on and straight into like a job as head of design, which is phenomenal. Like I learned a ton at that place.
As you said, you get your job as head of design at ID Media, London.
Yep.
You spend about a year there.
Yeah.
It's time for glue.
It's time for glue. So yeah, like I always think that there are places that work out and then places that don't. I always feel like now as a leader and as someone with a team, you don't own anyone, and to have the ego or the gall to think that you own people and somehow they're always going to be better at your agency, even if they're not performing or what have you, or to try to fix people or what have you. It's not the right way, because everyone has places where they thrive and places that don't suit them. And I would, comfortably say I went into ID Media. I was going through quite a lot of stuff in my personal life as well, and it just wasn't the right place for me. And it's almost like I couldn't put my finger on what it was, that it just didn't sit well with me. So Glue came along, and actually how Glue came along is Glue used to be part of Deep End. So Glue used to be the digital advertising bit of Deep End. And they were always seen within Deep End almost, I don't want to say the poor cousins, but because they were doing advertising and not pure like design and branding, they were always a little bit to one side. But the trio of people who founded Glue are brilliant. And I bumped into Mark Cridge, who was the CEO at Glue, and he went, "Oh, look, we're looking for a head of art. Come in." And I think I did many, many hours of interviews. I really had to prove myself and prove that I was going to be able to lead like technology, experience, design, animation, everything to do with the craft of the work was kind of under my remit. Technology ended up like popping out the side. But when I first stepped in there, I think there were 30 of us.
Why do you think they chose you, and what did you say in those interviews that think?
I don't know, I'd like to think it was about my work, but it was probably also about my passion. Yeah. My passion for making great things. I'm quite fearless, I think, when it comes to making work. You learn when you're working in digital and innovation, and had gone through literally from no internet existing at all to this massive thing taking off, so many changes. You get used to creating work where you're not sure whether it's actually possible when you start doing it, and there are kind of ways to like mitigate that risk and kind of manage it and get to a really good place. So I think like part of it is like the fearlessness in going in to make great work where you might not succeed, right? You might go out to make something and realize it's actually technically not possible yet.
Very Well, it sounds like a lot of the areas that you were being interviewed about were areas that you'd kind of experienced in your younger days that you tinkered with or grown through as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, even back at art school, I a lot of the work I did wasn't on screen. It was like taking the on-screen stuff or taking digital experience or interactive experiences and making them real. So, pulling apart motion sensors from the hardware store and wiring them up to, various different things to create these kind of digital experiences. And all of that, really came in handy because, again, like a lot of where the interesting digital work was happening, yes, it was the internet, but it was all over it was all over the place. And you could be making a robot as easily as you could be making a banner ad. So, yeah.
While you're at Glue, Glue experienced something for the first time,
Yeah.
which is yourself and your MD were the first women to go on maternity leave in the company's history.
Yeah.
And I think for any mothers listening who've been through this, or any future mothers that may go through this, share what the experience was like for you.
Yeah. So, look, I think it's a lot better now because despite best intentions, I mean, Joe and I didn't know what we were what was happening to us.
Joe's the other.
Joe was the MD.
Did you go on mat leave at the same time?
Yeah, basically the same week.
Right.
So we didn't really even know what was going on with us, and the rest of the company certainly didn't know. And digital is quite as with most of my life, spending a lot of time with men. The digital industry is kind of very male dominated as well. So I think no one even had anything to like ground it on. Joe did a great job in trying to pull it together, but I really struggled with, we had some really big pieces of work that I really wanted to deliver and some really tough clients. And I remember having morning sickness the first trimester and being so ill and being there till, midnight, 2:00 in the morning, running into the bathroom, puking, coming back, or, in really important client meetings and having to hide how sick I was feeling and then running to the bathroom and being sick and coming back going, I can't even don't even know how to approach this. Like, how do you approach something like morning sickness when you've never kind of seen it or experienced it and the company doesn't know how to look after you? And when I came back from maternity leave, something that I really, really, so I founded She Says when I was pregnant, and worked on She Says the whole way through, sort of my maternity leave. And
She Says is the network.
It's the network. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For women digital.
Absolutely. And sort of more broadly as well, sort of any woman in the creative industries, we kind of help them to progress their careers. But yeah, we
founded that while you were pregnant.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I did a lot of work. What I realized is I'm quite a high energy person and I'm not very good at sitting around. And my son also didn't sleep and wouldn't sit still. And actually, if I sat him on my lap, he'd cry. I would have to be moving around to keep him quiet. So I would just stick him in the baby Bjorn and go everywhere. And I was, having meetings about She Says and running events with him stuck in the front and, all sorts of stuff sort of out in the world. When I got back to work, I realized that everyone saw me in a different way, regardless of whether they meant to or not. It's suddenly as if I lacked all ambition and I felt like I was being enormously underestimated and it was a really kind thing for people to say, oh, don't you want to spend more time at home with your son? And wouldn't you like to, are you sure you're not working too much? And I'm like, this is what I like. I get my energy through work. I love what I do. Don't block my access to the thing that I love, even if it's out of kindness.
So for men listening who are in this scenario where a woman comes back from mat leave, what's your advice for them on how to deal with that?
I think ask, don't assume. Yeah. Say ask about how much they're enjoying it. Don't, ask whether they want to be on that pitch or not. Don't just assume that they don't want to suddenly because they've got a kid.
And then on the flip side of that question, what would you say to women that are coming back from mat leave back into the office and professional environment?
Yeah, look, I think it is different for everyone, and I realise that my passion for coming back to work is probably as much of an edge case as someone who never wants to go back to work again. And there is a whole spectrum of things in the middle. And, it depends on your personal circumstances, what is going on within your family, a whole range of things. So I would just say never feel guilty for how you feel. Whatever you want to do, however you want to come back to work or not is the right thing to do. You should never compare yourselves to other women and what they're doing and how they're coping or what it is that they want.
It's something that has come up a few times in this sort of, you come back from maternity leave and it's almost like you have to start back from scratch again, or you have to qualify yourself in people's minds that you're a cool person, you're creative, you got this spark that you before. What do you think needs to change to help improve that transition back into it?
That is a very good question. Because, you've obviously got time to reflect as well when you're on maternity leave, and you might come back and your priorities might be very different. I think just making sure that there is, again, like space for discussion about what it is that someone wants and how they want to show up at work and what they're comfortable with and what from home they want to bring into the office. And if that's done in a really clear way, I think with the kind of senior management, they will then become your allies to make sure that stuff happens so that you're included. Because you do need allies. You come back and it's a very weird feeling to kind of come back into a place. When I came back to Glue, one of the big things was I was still very hands-on in the work. So I was, still really a flash developer and, programmer and designer as kind of well as running the team. I left for 9 months, came back. Everything had changed. Even the language that you used for Flash had changed. CSS, if anyone knows style sheets happened while I was on maternity leave. So you went from plain HTML all in one list of code to suddenly working with these other sort of page elements or what have you, which are all kind of stored with whether it's CSS or JavaScript in other places. So just like the structure of the things I was building had fundamentally changed. And I realized to kind of get up to speed and to keep up to speed with all of that stuff with a small kid, that was going to be impossible, because I used to spend all my nights like noodling about on my machine, which is when I thought, okay, what I need to do is I need to step into sort of more of a creative direction role where I could be a bit more hands-off, and I'm in charge of the ideas, and I know how stuff is built, and I know what looks good, and I know when I look at an animation how to make it pop, but I don't have to keep going back and relearning the software.
Yeah.
And so your first group creative director role comes up at Digitas.
Yeah.
How does that come about?
I won't tell you the full story because it would... basically, I had a job offer. So I was looking, going, I need to find a more creative role. And I had a job offer from another agency. And I actually had the contract with me. And this is very weird serendipity. I was walking along Commercial Road, and a friend of mine who was chief creative officer at Digitas drove past in a car and like stopped and went, "Hey, what are you doing? How are you doing?" And I went, "I'm fine. I've just got this job offer." And he went, "Do you want to come and work with me instead?" And I went,
in his car still?
Yeah. And I said, "Yes, but only if you can get me like a contract within the next week, because I don't want to lose this job." And he went, "All right."
This whole conversation happened while he's in the car side of the street.
Yeah. And so he gave me a job as group creative director, and that, I was terrified going in there because I'd never been a creative director before. Going in as a group creative director, it was a big step. And I was, went in there going, am I going to be able to do this? What have they hired me for? It's a much bigger agency. They have huge technical capability. Like, they're building banking platforms, and they're doing like a whole world of stuff which Glue wasn't doing, just doing like the fun, super creative brand side of things. This was like heavy going stuff plus the other stuff. I thought, how am I going to actually be able to lead teams, until I realized they had hired me, particularly because I was different, because I wasn't, I didn't fit that mold, and I could bring something new into the business.
This is all going through your mind in the days before starting.
Yeah, and I think I went straight into a pitch, and so it was enormous. There was like 700 people in the agency, so is the whole of the big chunk of the Truman Brewery was all. So you're suddenly in this huge place from this like little kind of warehouse space, and took some getting used to.
And what was that? Looking back, what did you do to sort of help deal with all of those emotions and feeling like, oh my gosh, I've never been in this environment before? What if?
I don't know. I think I pulled on all my experience of having always somehow been in that situation in one way or the other. And went, okay, this is like, it's uncomfortable, but I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. I know how to ride through this feeling, and I know how to, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. With my fist clenched, because as I said, it doesn't always work out. But luckily, it worked out brilliantly, and they promoted me to ECD really quickly, and that was really cool. And I have to say, my CCO, who's my mate, Chris, I think he was so great, because in those first 3 months or so, when I got my promotion, usually you would have a manager. I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but usually when you would have a manager and you have an appraisal, and they talk to you about how well you're going, he sat me down and went, look, you know how well you're going because everyone's telling you and you're doing a great job. Let's spend the next hour and I'm going to tell you about what you're doing really shit, which is a very Australian way of working. But I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it, because I'm like, I had no idea I was doing this, and no idea, and I can fix this, and I can delegate this, and yeah, it was much appreciated.
So there's one lesson from that story, which is walk down Commercial Road with a contract in your hand and just look in cars.
Honestly, it was,
and you might get
a
job.
It was absolute kismet.
That's very cool.
I think that reflects what I said earlier as well, in terms of you were ready for something at that moment in time, and it came.
You know what? I always, I'm a great believer in opening yourself up to the world and waiting to see what comes your way, and being ready all the time. So, I'm always making sure part of me is just open to whatever might come my way in whatever form. It doesn't have to be work.
And what was the transition like from group creative director to ECD?
Yeah, look, I'm really proud. I think Simon and I, between the two of us, oversaw what I still think is the best, the peak creative time for that agency. It was before they sold to Publicis, and sort of building up for a few years to the sale. But
what were you making?
Oh man, all sorts of cool stuff. But I think the thing I'm most proud of there is having come from glue and knowing how powerful a really great environment is. That feeling of being on a pirate ship, right? Going into the creative unknown with excitement rather than fear. And being able to bring that into, it was called LBI at the time, but into Digitas. Go, okay, we're going to try for stuff that's out of our reach. We're going to hire people that are kind of maybe a bit too good for us right now, because even though we might only keep them for a year, they are going to take us to some amazing places in the meantime. And the culture that we built there was so wonderful and so tight, and there was so much creative energy. And we made some amazing work, serious stuff totally replatformed Virgin Atlantic and their whole booking system, and brought joy and kind of humanity and the Virgin spirit into all of those touch points, an amazing mobile app. Did some really fun films for them as well. Did one of my favourite pieces of work ever, which was for Macmillan Cancer Support. And they came to us with, I think it was 10 grand, asking whether we could build a website that you filled in your, postcode and your name, and it would pop out a pro forma letter to send to your MP lobbying for fuel poverty for cancer patients. Mm-hmm. So, because a lot of cancer patients, they obviously get a lot colder and they're not able to pay their bills and what have you. And we took one look at that, and actually the planner, Ed, said, I've done some research and no one ever reads those pro forma letters. They go in the bin. So we said to Macmillan, okay, we've got this idea for this other thing that we want to do. If it fails, we'll do your letter. But what if we could create a petition, and what if we could create the first ever knitted petition around what keeps you warm? So we basically hacked this industrial knitting machine. Even things like the tensioning, we ripped the hand towels out of the bathrooms in the agency to create a tensioning machine to keep the scarf straight, and it was knitting like this giant scarf. So you could go onto a website, you could write what keeps you warm, and people wrote really beautiful things about, lost loved ones and all sorts of things. That was the way of signing the petition to end fuel poverty for cancer patients. Because we didn't have money for moderation, we translated whatever they wrote into a unique knitting pattern. So this scarf just kept on getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. It was all live streamed. It would break down all the time, and there were about 4 of us whose phones would beep in the middle of the night if the machine broke. Then you'd have to go into the office, put a sheet mask on and fix the machine wearing a sheet mask, and then people would watch this thing all day to see when the sheep were going to come, which was just brilliant, like #sheet mask. And we ran that for a couple of months in the basement and ended up with this petition. It was longer than Big Ben is tall. I can't remember, one of the princes took a bit to the North Pole and we got the law changed. And that for me, I'm super proud of that. But the process there was every week we would stop and go, can this project go any further? How are we going to make this happen? Do we have to revert to plan B? Where are we going to get the wool from? We've got no money. How are we going to, the tensioning machine, everything's curling. How are we going to fix it? One of the creative techs literally went to the bathroom and went, these automatic hand towel dispensers, they've got a tensioning mechanism. Let's rip it off the wall. So, I love that.
Amazing. And I think, yes, it's obviously, we'll get to it, but it's a trend in your career and, doing work that makes a difference and positive change in the world.
Yeah.
And the next step after that, you're having a great time at Digitas.
Yeah.
First ECD role. Sounds like it's going great, having fun.
Yeah.
And so when does Dare come into the picture?
So Flo Heiss, who was the ECD at Dare, I've known him for a very long time, and I will talk just very quickly about the power of peer groups. So right from when I was at Glue, this organisation was created called Creative Social. It was created just by a creative actually, and a guy who used to be the CFO at Chale, Danny Ellie. And it was a way of digital creative directors getting together because we had so little power in the industry, because no one cared about digital. Everyone cared about above the line. The above the line creative directors got all the column inches, all the fame, all the everything. And if you were doing digital, you were very much ignored and seen as lesser. So they came together and went, why don't we build basically a social group where we get to know one another and share things? And that grew from a couple of people to, in the end, a couple of hundred people with some really famous names in there over the course of maybe 10 years where it ran. We would spend quality time together. We would share work with each other before it went live and comment on the work. We'd talk about the industry and help raise each other's profiles. We'd help each other. If we saw someone amazing and we couldn't hire them, we've still got a WhatsApp group. It's been over 20 years. But that one thing meant I knew Chris from Digitas and I knew Flo. And Flo and I had just always gotten on, and I think we both loved each other's work, and we have very similar music tastes, which is great because it's not that common. And he was looking for a creative partner at Dare and just called me and said, do you want to come to Dare? And I thought, LBI has been brilliant, or Digitas has been brilliant. And I've learned everything about full system integration and, how to run a server farm and all sorts of such expansive digital knowledge and really deep digital knowledge and what digital strategy really is. But I want to go head on into just making super creative stuff again. And, they'd won Agency of the Decade. And so I thought I would jump in there.
And you did.
And I did.
Yeah. And it says board level. What does that mean for in that scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. So I sat on the board.
That was the first time experiencing that, was it?
No, I'd sat on the management board. At Glue, I was on the management board, not the exec, the management board. When I went to Dare, I was part of the exec.
And so for those who don't know what that is or haven't experienced that, what is that?
It's super, super important. When you see those people squirrel themselves away for a couple of hours, every week or every other week, you look at the financials, you look at the health of clients and what direction they're moving in. You look at the profitability of clients. You look at the latest work and you discuss the latest work. You probably talk about new business, what's coming in, what are the business opportunities, if there are any acquisition opportunities, or if there's been feedback from HR or the people team about things. You talk about policy and the policy of the agency, whether that's maternity policy or bereavement policy or what have you. There might be things about behavioural stuff. There might be stuff about a new appraisal system. It's everything to do with the functioning of a business.
And who's in the room?
It would be C-suite plus. So, you've got your CEO, you've got your MDs in there, you've got your CFO in there, you've got your chief creative officer or your ECD or what have you in there. But you could have, depending on the agency, you could have a ton of people or just a few. You've probably got your head of people in there. You might have head of reputation or, PR in there. You could have your CMO in there. Each agency is very different.
Are you an agency or brand that would like to work with our production company, Unity and Motion? If so, contact us at unityandmotion.com. We produce commercials and social content for brands such as Chanel, Amazon, Reebok, Harrods, The Ritz, and many more. Now back to the show.
You have this, great new role.
Yep.
On board level. You're there for a year.
Uh-huh.
And it's going great, having a great time, and you decide to leave it all.
Yeah, well, look, it's... I don't think anyone at Dare would object to me saying this. I think Dare had gone through a really difficult time. They'd merged with another brilliant agency called MCBD. You know what? I think generally everyone there was just too nice. So when I arrived, there was kind of an assurance that all the hiccups had been ironed out. And when I got there, I realised, there were multiple MDs, there were multiple heads of strategy. There were so many people in so many different places, and no one had done the integration bit at all. When I joined the creative department, there were still some creatives that weren't reporting into me because they came from MCBD, and they used to report into the old ECD who'd left to create Lucky Generals. But none of that, and none of the plumbing had been fixed. So it was really difficult, and I did some brilliant work there and met some brilliant people there. And again, it felt like a family, but I honestly think everyone was too nice. So including myself, I have a terrible problem with being too nice about things sometimes. I'm learning. So it just made it really, really difficult. On top of that, I think Flo had gone through just such a hard time because it was his baby. He was one of the founders of Dare, and he could see it wasn't working. And so, he had a lot of stress. And so it just became a brilliant place, but quite a difficult place, and a place where I could see that I wasn't going to be able to fix all the problems because someone in charge of the people in charge of the business had to be the ones who were going to fix the problems. And at the same time, so we had Diageo as a client at Dare. Bacardi approached Dare to do some work, and we couldn't do it because of conflict. So one of the heads of strategy, who'd been the CSO at Dare, and one of the MDs from Dare, Claire and Nick, had formed a separate business unit, which didn't have a name at first, to take on some of the Bacardi work and to very much do, I guess it's business strategy, really. So looking at the business and looking how Bacardi delivered ads and the whole structure of their business, how they should change to get better work, and all the internal training that that was called Mr. President. And then very soon after, they realised that Bacardi said, "You've given us a framework, but none of the agencies we work with can deliver the work you're telling us we should be delivering. Can you do creative work?" And they went, "Okay, we need a third partner." So they were in the same building, and I was looking for something else, and we kind of got match made. And as soon as I met Nick and Claire, I went, "You know what? I'd love to join a business with you." And you know, like I said, I'm a great believer in being open and in kismet. Claire is going to laugh at this if she ever hears it. But I'd just been to visit my friend Elvan, the one I was telling you about, the Lateral corporate whore. She's Turkish and she was living back in Istanbul. And I visited one of her friend's mums, who is a renowned coffee ground reader. She read my coffee grounds and she said, "You'll know where you need to go because of the door." And I thought, whatever, bollocks. And then when I met Claire and Nick, Claire had just installed this massive door into their new office. It's a beautiful door. I'm like, why on earth is this door here? Her husband's an architect and had found this incredibly ornate, beautiful door, and it was right in the middle of the office. And I went, okay, whatever. I don't know whether it's a sign or not, but it's good enough for me.
It's quite cool because I guess getting a new door is not what you do every day.
No, I mean, it was the only thing in the entire office. It was just a box with a door. So, yeah.
You saw the door?
I saw the door and went, okay.
Did you ever see the coffee reader again?
No, you know what? No, I didn't.
Well, if you ever have a tough decision, I'd go back.
Yeah.
Sounds like they know what they're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, so went and joined them and built Mr. P. You know,
how did it go from being a business unit of Dare to being you guys going and set off your own company?
Yeah, so it was a business unit of Cosette, who was the holding company. So Dare, there were a couple of agencies that were owned by Cosette. Dare was one of them. So they basically got permission to set up a new agency, a new unit within Cosette. And then a couple of years later, we bought it back from Cosette. So it was fully independent.
Okay, so you guys bought it back off them. I see. Yeah. So you had to invest your own money, make it yours.
Yeah, well, luckily, I mean, and this, again, Bacardi were, until they weren't, probably the best client I've ever worked with. So, you know, they really made it a lot easier for us to get off the ground, to find our own office. So we weren't using their space to hire people because they had just such a huge volume of work, and it was so much fun working with them.
Were you nervous about starting a business, or you felt like you'd done this kind of before plenty of times?
No, I wasn't nervous at all. I was really excited because, I mean, who wouldn't be excited about having your own thing? Yeah, no, not nervous at all.
Would one day have your own agency?
Yeah, because it must have been quite almost like a mental leap to a degree, because you'd been going through all these different agencies and being employed in so many places to then, right, this is mine.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know whether this is helpful or not, but I've never had a plan to do anything. I've never had a plan to have my own agency, to be a CCO, to come to London. I've never gone, my 10-year vision is X. I've always gone, am I learning new stuff? Am I loving work every day? Am I with good people? Is there other that I want to be doing? And then, like I said, being open to the world in terms of what next? That seems to have, taken me in a relatively decent path, I would say. But yeah, I'd never imagined I would have my own agency, but I never imagined it was a big step to have one either. It just felt like the right thing. And at a time when the digital industry was being completely crucified by the big tech platforms, it used to be you could put so much creativity into what you were doing in digital. Like I said, you could make a banner out of a robot, and everything was being pulled towards similar formats, similar, you'd have, and obviously Facebook, what have you, Meta have got all the data, but, they go around to all the clients going, you have to start with your logo, you've got to have a face in the first 2 seconds, you've got to do whatever the rule was at the time.
Yeah. And
the rules kept changing. The text can only be, a certain size in the asset. So suddenly you went from having all of the tools to having a really limited set of tools. And there were obviously, there are creative things that can be done with those platforms, but it just destroyed everything in its path. And then obviously with programmatic coming in as well, and more money coming into digital, so there's more people looking at it, measuring, I would say, the wrong things often. So, you're measuring click-throughs, so people are creating bots to click through or to view something for a certain period of time. So it's not even getting in front of a human, certainly not creative. but it's delivering the results that the clients are tracking. So they're not going to get fired for it. So we've kind of, unfortunately, created a little bit of a mess in the digital space, I think, by not focusing on what we know works everywhere else, which is creativity. I know Meta's rode back from that, and they're talking a lot about creativity, as are some of the other platforms. But the reality is there's so much more than those platforms. So what we thought with Mr. P is if we could take the best of digital, like thinking about the audience first, like proper digital and experience planning, that bravery in terms of the outcome could be anything. We're going to do the right thing for the job, like a couple of great things, not filling a media plan. Yeah, it seemed like a good place to start. So the best of digital, but applying it to through the line work.
And there were three of you, how did you decide, for anyone listening who's thinking of starting a business or having some partners, how do you decide who would do what?
Claire and Nick already had the partnership there, and Claire is the most amazing. She's like a ninja. She's a client whisperer. She can get anyone to do anything without looking like she's done anything. She's so calm and magical. And Nick is like the biggest brain box. He's actually incredibly creative, but he's a fantastic strategist. And then we had a really good team right from the get-go of people, a lot of whom were at Dare, who's an amazing experience planner, an amazing woman who's now the MD there, an amazing creative who was my right-hand person, who actually I think was freelancing there before I even started, who's now the ECD there, or the CCO there, John. So it was a super close team, and everyone just played to their strengths.
Yeah, I think there's a great merit in playing to your strengths.
Yeah.
And it's something that Charles and I have learned about ourselves in our journey.
Yeah. I'd say it's the best piece of advice someone ever gave me, and it was when I was at Digitas, and one of the creative directors, Abby, I think I was really stressing about not being able to do something, and she said, focus on what you're good at and make it shine like the sun, so that no one sees the stuff that you're not good at, because the stuff you're not good at is going to be someone else's sun. And it's so much better than going, what am I really bad at? And I'm going to put all my time trying to make good what I'm rubbish at. So much better to focus on what you're good at.
What advice do you have to share someone who's in a job at the moment, they'd like to start their own company, or they're thinking about it?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Make sure you have partners. Don't do it on your own. Like the fact there was three of us, as I said, plus a tight team around us, but there were like three of us at the centre, means we got through really rocky times together. Like we got through awful personal situations where someone just couldn't function. We got through losing our biggest client and realising our contracts weren't right, and they were just walking out the door tomorrow, and we weren't going to get any more money from them. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, 60% of our revenue or something walked out the door.
Ouch.
We've got through our office burning down. We've got through like so many things we've been able to get through. We were able to get through because we got through them together. And if someone was not on form, the other two people would step in and protect them, and everyone had each other's back. I think you have to have that, because otherwise it must be such a lonely place.
Talk to us about that, because that's a massive thing. You did you get a phone call from this? There's a client that's bringing in, as you said, 60...
Yeah, something like that.
Something percent business of your revenues. And what happened? They said
They did a deal on a golf course with a network agency, and all the work just disappeared overnight, basically. I mean, it maybe took about a month or 6 weeks or something to walk out the door.
When you hear the news, how do you find out the news, and what are you feeling?
Well, we're just like, the first thing is we've got to protect our people. So we did everything that we could to make sure that we kept our people, you know, including pay cuts and like everything that we possibly could to make sure that as many people as possible didn't lose their jobs. And I don't think there were maybe a couple of people that we had to let go, but it wasn't very many. You know, but asked people, everyone in the agency, to like defer things and move things around and do what they could afford. And
what's that like?
And went out and got any kind of business, anything. We did the animations for Odeon Cinema, like behind the hot dog stands with the moving hot dogs and the menus, because we're like, it's 20 grand or whatever, and we need some money, so let's do those animations.
What did you learn in that experience of just kind of surviving that?
Yeah, look, I think you learn where your resilience comes from. You know, to get through something like that and to come out the other side and to go, we've got this, is really powerful. Because I think at first you're just in a headspin. You don't know what is going to happen and you don't know how to approach it. And all you could do is go, I'm the boss, and we are the bosses, and we are the ones driving the bus. And if we panic, everyone else is going to panic. So we have to do what needs to be done and do it really, really calmly and roll our sleeves up, which is what we did.
And the company's still going to this day. It was listed in one of the top 100 places to work in the industry.
Yeah. I'm like, honestly, I'm so proud. I love those people so much.
But as you're talking now, we know that you're not currently at Mr. President. We know you're at Grey.
Yeah.
Tell us the story of what happened.
Yeah. So, it was 2020, and so a couple of big things are happening. First of all, the bushfires in Australia, which really threw me because I was very close to my parents' house. And our old home in Canberra had already been burnt down by bushfires after we'd moved out of there. And I was, and they're not spring chickens anymore. So, I had kind of that going on in my head. I had some, my son wasn't having a great time at school, and I was thinking, there's going to be probably change there. And then looking at the business, and we were doing okay, but we weren't doing brilliantly. And we were kind of looking at how to kind of reduce costs again.
And this is this is 2020. This is when the world is locked down.
So it's just before the lockdown.
Okay.
And then you could see COVID coming around the corner.
Right.
And it was like, I think this thing is really going to make an impact. And there's already, the business is under so much pressure already. And I've got all of this other stuff going on in my head. How do I, if I need to, move my son into another school and I have to pay for it, how am I going to do that, for example?
Were you extremely stressed at this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was more like trying to lay things out and, and figure out what I needed to change to fix, to make things better. So it was stressful, but it wasn't a panic. It was like, okay, I've got these things happening. What is going to be the best thing? And we'd all worked together for like 8 years. And as I said, they're so dear to me. But when I looked at what was coming around the corner, and I looked at what I was doing in the agency where, John is absolutely brilliant, and he was doing most of the day-to-day creative direction of the work. We were looking at, we're going to have to put people on furlough, but those people who we might have to put on furlough, they're actually the ones doing the work. And when I took a step back and went, I know I'm important to the business because I'm a founder, but if I was from the outside going to remove one thing from this picture, which is going to make the biggest financial difference for the least impact in terms of the work, it would be removing myself. Because I spent a lot of time out there talking about the agency in the world. I spent, a lot of time doing the thought leadership pieces. And you could see all of that was going to go during COVID as well. So I'm like, if I was going to put one person on furlough or tell them off, it would be me. And that might, you'd be able to keep that person and that person, or be able to move a little bit more quickly.
But
so it made me think.
People who was there at the start and started this.
Yeah.
What were you feeling to then think?
Yeah, like sad, but it just seemed like it was such an obvious thing to me that the most sensible person to go was me. And, and then at the same time, I had a number of other job offers come in, one of which was in Australia. And again, like the bushfires had happened, I was thinking about my parents. I was thinking about having to possibly put my son into a private school. I was going, okay, maybe this is the universe telling me something has to change. So I just put myself out there and I had these job offers and I took the one at Grey.
Yeah, so you came to this realization that, okay, me going is what I think is the best. When you had that conversation with your other business partners,
and it was all really difficult because in the middle of all of this happening, the lockdown happened, and we went on lockdown in Mr. P as a test lockdown, and then we never went back. I think it happened with a lot of people, right? They went on lockdown a week early, or what they thought was maybe a week early, and then everything suddenly got locked down. So I never got to go back to Mr. P and speak to my business partners face to face. I had to do it over the phone, which was awful.
And the staff as well, you didn't get to say goodbye.
Didn't get to say goodbye. But I still see them all the time. I went to their 10th birthday, 6 months, it wasn't even 6 months ago. It was wonderful. I'll always be a founder of that agency. They'll always be my friends. I've learned so much from all of them. But at the time, it was the right time for me to go and try something else. Weirdly, some of the things I was stressed about, like moving my son, never ended up having to happen because of COVID as well. So some problems come, some problems go.
Great. And so your time ends at Mr. President in some ways.
Yeah.
And how does this opportunity to and we should say, by the way, you were founding partner and chief creative officer at Mr. President.
Yes.
And this opportunity comes up with where you're at now.
At Grey, yeah.
Grey. How does that come about?
Well, they kind of tapped me up, and
on Commercial Street.
No, no, I didn't know them. They tapped me up, and at first I was thinking, oh, gee, I guess everyone's heard I've had a very unconventional path into where I am, and I was like, I'm totally honoured you would even think of me. But Grey is 105 years old, and you make proper advertising. And am I really the right person for the job? Don't you want someone who's made the most famous TV ad of 2020?
Were you ever saying this?
No. This is all going on in my mind.
Right. During the interview stages or just before you spoke to them?
No, you know what? Because I just went into the interview going, I'm just going to go for this because the one thing I'm really excited about is it scares me. And that means it's an opportunity for growth.
Back on the pirate ship.
Back on the pirate ship. I'm just going, give me something that scares me. I don't want to sit somewhere and be complacent. I was thinking about the things that I loved in my career. At Digitas, one of the things I loved most, actually, was the scale of it and the fact that sometimes you really had to fight to get the thing that you wanted. You get told no, and then you have to be a bit naughty and do it anyway. And then you can not turn around and say, I told you so. But, there's a little bit of mischief that I like in being told no, that I realised I was missing a little bit when no one ever tells you no because it's your business. So I thought, okay, Grey could be really interesting. It's part of WPP. It's, famous for a certain kind of work. It's had really famous people in the role that I'm being asked to, go apply for. So I'm just going to go for it because it scares the shit out of me, and that's great.
Nice.
What is the for anybody who'd like to be a CCO, Chief Creative Officer? What is the interview process like for a role like that, and what advice do you have through that process?
Absolutely. So the really interesting thing is, because I hadn't done a portfolio for ages, I had to get my portfolio together. That is a thing. That took me a while. But it is literally meeting all the senior people in the business, both the creative, obviously, but from the business point of view, and globally as well as in the UK. So I met a lot of people, and I met a lot of people really quickly because the world was starting to close. And then...
What kind of questions would they ask you?
Well, a lot of it is to do with the work, obviously, because you have to show that you're going to bring creative excellence into the business. Running the team, running the department, growth, your kind of appetite for, I guess, kind of risk versus rewards, the kinds of clients that you're passionate about, what you're personally passionate about, looking at your values, personal values, and whether that kind of connects to the business values, how you work well and might manage upwards and downwards, right? So how I got on with my global chief creative officer, what I could contribute to the business. It was pretty wide ranging depending on who I was meeting.
And advice going through that process, looking back, what would you...
Look, I think you are only going to be a success if you are yourself, right? And everyone is different. I'm not the cookie cutter template for a CCO, and nor is anyone else. I think you bring to the role what is inside you, and with taking that advice into account. You have other people around you who can do the stuff that is not your son.
So you go through the interview process.
Yep.
And do you remember the day when they said, Laura, it's you?
Yeah, I do, because they said, Laura, it's you. You need to sign this straight away because this COVID thing is really, really crazy and we don't know when we're going to get a hiring freeze. So you've got to make up your mind. And as I said, I had like 2 roles on the table and one was back in Oz. And
big decision.
Yeah, that's a big
it
decision
is.
in itself.
And in the end, I put it to a family vote
Wow.
and we ended up here.
And so you stayed.
And so I stayed.
How long did it take you to make that decision?
Maybe a week.
And all the time they're probably like, hey, Laura.
Yeah, just quickly before things shut down. Yeah, and then obviously it kind of started at Grey in the midst of turmoil. So I was the first remote employee.
Oh, wow.
Which is a thing, and stepping in to kind of lead a team through this incredible change, which was, exactly as tumultuous as really what it was at Mr. P. Like money turned off over, clients turned off overnight, people to look after, yada, 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 yada. So it was a little bit of a baptism of fire.
Yeah. How did you embrace leadership in a time like that where you couldn't see everyone physically?
You know what? I made sure I got one-to-ones in with everyone really, really early and for like big chunks of time. And I still do it. I still do one-to-ones with everyone in the team, like really, really regularly.
What's your kind of process for the one-to-ones? Do you have a sort of particular style and approach you do it that you think would work well for others?
No, look, I think sometimes it's about work. And with the more senior teams, it's more often about the work. Very often it's just like how are you? Like, how are you really? What's going on? How's your cat? Has your dog come home from the vet yet? What things are you really stressed about at the moment? Just trying to make sure that everyone feels like they belong and that someone is there to listen, which at the end of the day, the more senior you get, the more your role is really to be at the service of the people that work for you, right?
Yeah.
You're not just Chief Creative Officer, though. You're President as well.
Yeah.
Explain that for us.
Yeah, so I kind of won't go into the details, but obviously COVID caused like a lot of turmoil. And I think, Grey's had quite a lot of changes, even before me. There've been quite a lot of changes in London and globally. And we were without a CEO for quite a while. And, one day got a call. I had a conversation around, you'd be a great CEO one day and maybe you can kind of, learn the ropes. And I thought, that's great. And then that conversation disappeared. And then it was literally, do you want to step in and do that role? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. Like, because I love the people there so much. And actually, I think one of the things that happened when I came in as CCO was I realized how much I knew about running a business, because I just, learned it. Even being the chief creative officer in my own business, you learn everything about business. So I had come in and I'd implemented a load of stuff and restructured stuff and like worked with, I've got an amazing CFO, by the way, Liam, who's a total superstar. We'd had to take a lot of difficult decisions together and we'd have to work through a lot of stuff together, and seeing like a dramatic change in the quality of the work and the profitability of the agency and the culture of the agency. And so I felt like, honestly, like so honoured that they would ask. At the time they said, we won't call you CEO because then you get caught up in all the WPP stuff. So we'll call you president. I brought on 2 MDs, one who was internally, like an internal promotion, who's brilliant, and an external person. Between them and my CFO, they know all that I don't know, right? They are brilliant. And so that allows me to do the bit, which I guess is the president bit, which is be the face of the agency, set the vision for the agency, be the heart of the agency, or like sort of, ground the agency culture in a certain place and make sure we stay on track. Have all the tough, a lot of the tough conversations with people when that kind of stuff has to happen. Or, what I'm realizing now is actually the more I'm leaning in and getting involved in WPP, the better it is. Because they've got a load of stuff to offer, which Grey has never availed themselves of, because they've always been a little bit of the black sheep and gone, we're not really part of a network agency. Actually, it's been brilliant. So I'm doing much more of what I was told I shouldn't have to worry about.
What do you enjoy about that stuff?
There's so many skills and so many great people out there within the network that we don't have connections. Like it's building the connections. I've always been a really collaborative, creative. I've always built stuff with a team. I'm not one of those people that sits off and makes things on my own or writes something on my own. It's very much, it's all about the collaboration, bringing different people together. And what excites me is like the more different in, literally at Gray we call it the collision of difference. The more different in, the more interesting out, right? It's like the bang of creativity comes from different points of view, different backgrounds, different skill sets, all of those things smashing together to make something new. So what I've been loving the most is that there's so many interesting people and new skills in those other businesses, which we can kind of smash together with what we do.
How many CEOs and CCOs are there, and how do you do both? And are you transitioning away from the creativity to do more of the CEO type stuff?
The answer is not very many. At Gray, there is someone in my position in Germany as well, Francie. She also rocks.
What role is she in? Sorry.
So she's president and CCO as well.
I see.
But yeah, not very many of us do both, and not very many people transition from creative into the business side, or actually vice versa.
Do you think there's a good reason for that? Do you think it's just naturally that way? Do you think it should be more?
I think some people are very happy just doing creative. Some people are very happy doing business. I think there was an enormous value in a creative company having someone who knows how stuff is made and how to get to great, being in charge of the business and being able to pull the levers in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
Because I think too often they're really separate. And certainly the early years of digital, people used to be much more like practitioner, business owner, strategist, everything all in one, and you understand what you need to do to make great work. Whereas, as businesses are bigger and more formalized, that doesn't happen. So I feel really privileged there. I also think as creative people, one of the biggest rorts that's been sold to creative people is you do it because you love it, therefore you don't care about the money. You hear so much stuff about artists don't need supporting because they're going to do it anyway because they're just passionate about art. Or creators don't need training because they just love it anyway and they're just passionate, so we'll spend the money in other parts of the business on more formal training. And certainly the hangover from even 10 years ago, particularly at the traditional agencies, was if creatives find out about the money, it's going to somehow cut the corners off the creativity. So we're not going to tell you about budgets. We're not going to take you to client meetings. The account people will present your work. They'll have all the hard questions. We'll keep you in your golden magical cell because creativity is magical and somehow it's going to break it. But creativity is not magical and you're not going to break it. And without understanding the money and your client's business, you have no power.
So what's your advice to people in creative roles then?
Understand the business and understand your client's business.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I guess that then stops those blockers, those markers that they didn't even know were there because they didn't understand something.
Yeah, exactly. We've just launched something actually with She Says. It's called The Way. It's like an online tool for sort of middle career women in the creative industries, and it learns a little bit about you, and then it feeds you a module every month, the training module every month. We've made sure in there are really important things like finance, how to read a spreadsheet, all that stuff. It sounds really boring, but it's really, really not boring because that is what is keeping your lights on and paying your bills and feeding your stomach.
Are there any secrets or strategies or things that you do as a CCO or president and there might be tools, the way you manage your time, the processes? What are things that if you weren't to do them, things would crumble pretty quickly, and these are things that have really worked for you that you could share?
I walk to work every day. I don't go into the office every day, but every day I go to the office I walk, which is about an hour and 20 minutes. And that is my me time where I plan the day. And actually, even if I'm not walking into work, I need time at the beginning of the day to plan my day. It's when I'm at my most creative. It's where I connect a lot of the dots in my thinking. So just actual thinking time. And I find walking is really good. Something about walking somehow kind of stimulates your brain to make those connections.
And just getting into the minutiae, when you say plan your day, what do? Do you write it on a notepad? Do you have a notes app? Do you?
Sometimes I speak it. Sometimes I put it in the notes app. Sometimes I email it to myself. Sometimes I scribble it on the back of my hand. Basically, whatever I've got in my pocket.
And you're planning what exactly?
So it could be suddenly an idea will come to me for a campaign, like an issue that I've had, on a campaign, or a problem with a client, and suddenly go, oh, actually, we could do it like this, or a question about new business and how something is going to be structured, and suddenly that shape will come to me. So it could be anything, but it's kind of when I formulate a lot of my ideas in that walking time.
Great, I love that. And anything else?
I get a lot of sleep. I know.
How many hours?
Well, I am an early morning person, so I'm usually up. I was up at 5:45 this morning, but usually up like between 5:45 and about 6:30. But I'm usually in bed by like 9:30.
That's the way. Absolutely.
If I could go to bed at 9 and spend half an hour listening to a podcast and falling asleep, that's my heaven.
Now you can listen to yourself on podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Put myself to sleep.
There are any other strategies maybe from the president side or CEO?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm very lucky that I have an EA, but it's just always checking sort of what's next, like making sure if I didn't have Lou when I was at Mr. P and I didn't have anyone, I would have to be constantly kind of checking my diary. 'Cause I'm really shit at planning my time, and I would be double and triple booking myself all the time, and it would be a real mess, and everything would fall into chaos. So having to go into my diary and like chuck stuff out all the time. Luckily now I have the amazing Lou who helps me to do that. But time management is really, really important. So I'm very glad I've got help. Doing hard things first. Like I said, I'm like really nice. I think I suffer from being too nice, and sometimes those conversations that you have to have are really, really hard. So I write a bit of a list and put the awful ones at the top. I make sure I get them out of the way as quickly as I can.
And there's some momentum and flow there. Once you get that hard thing done, you're like, oh, yeah, I did it. Okay. And then if the next one's not as hard, then you're just like, okay, cool.
And look, and I keep to-do lists all the time because, again, like I'm not good with time management. So unless I have a list, I'll be distracted on something else or pulled onto something else. So coming back to my list constantly, I carry it around with me everywhere.
Yeah, there's something really satisfying about looking back at that list. Did it yesterday.
Yeah.
So many things to do. And I got to the end of the day, I looked at it and I was like, oh, wow. Ticked them all off, and you get so much relief from that.
Yeah.
And mental clarity as well.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like I find I work best if I've got one thing to focus on, I can focus on it fully for a period of time, and then I've got another thing I can focus on, because I do get really, really distracted otherwise, and I will find myself doing 5 things at once and forgetting I've even had a conversation. So it's like, right, okay, I've had that conversation, I'm going to write that down, I'm going to do it now, then I'm going to come on to the next thing, because otherwise I'll be over here going, oh yeah, 3 days ago I was supposed to do that.
Can you ever see yourself just doing a CEO role and moving out of a creative role entirely?
I mean, certainly I love the president part of my role. I really do. But I also love the work. And then when you actually get to like dip in and do the work, I don't think I could ever take myself. I'm too hands-on. Like I still want to get in there and do stuff and write things and make stuff. And that is a totally other joy.
I wonder, if we would speak in 5 years' time or however long, you would have that same realization you did after maternity leave, that I'm actually going to have to step out of
doing it,
the coding or whatever it is, but now it's just at a high level.
Yeah, who knows? Like I'm open to kind of whatever happens. At the moment, I'm really happy, and the business is really happy, and that's the main thing. It's working for the business, and it's working for me. I just jumped into a project yesterday, and as soon as I got the briefing, I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting, and I get to do the work. And now I've, again, like sleeves rolled up doing the work, and yeah, I don't know that I could put that to one side. It's too much fun making stuff.
Well, do you know what? Just follow the door.
Follow the door.
Follow the door.
Just go through the door.
Yeah.
When that door comes, you'll know.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned it yet, and I want to. Is OKO? OKO?
Yeah, OKO. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, OKO is something that I founded over COVID, actually, with an amazing guy called Dave Evans. It's his baby, really. It's his idea. He approached me ages ago to set up a school. It was going to be a physical school that taught underrepresented young people about the world of work through this 12-week program that used house music as its kind of backbone. So you learn how to DJ, but you also learn how to put on an event, and you learn about budgeting, and you learn about marketing, and
Love it.
would have been awesome. And we got to the point where we were just looking at getting it to launch, and then COVID happened, and we'd had some feedback from someone actually I used to work at Digitas who said, but yeah, how's it going to scale? How's it going to, as a business? And then Dave had this brilliant idea to flip it to online. So we've been working again with this developer Carl and a number of other people who've all contributed. So it's an app that connects any young person actually with a mentor in business. And I say mentor, it's not your normal mentoring. It's not like sitting in front of someone telling them about their life like I am now. It is like a very structured 6-stage program that helps the young person find their superpowers, understanding what things they put in their own way to success, the kind of person they are, all of this stuff, and kind of pops them out the other end with a much greater understanding of themselves. But the beautiful thing about it is it connects the mentor and mentee through psychometric profiling, so through a personality test. So even though you are nothing like the person you're mentoring, or nothing like the person you're menteeing, you are still very much the same. So you're nothing alike, but you're very much the same. And it's been incredible actually to see it. It is so powerful, like from both sides. Everyone gets so much out of it. You get to learn how to, from a mentor point of view, you get to learn how to like manage and have conversations with people who are totally unlike you, which is often really awkward in business. You know, if you haven't sort of been trained in terms of how to manage people. From the mentee's point of view, they get access to all sorts of people who they wouldn't have been paired with, who can really help them because they know how you work. Like for example, actually the first person I was paired with was so bad at time management that like he would rock up on the wrong day. And I'm like, dude, it's okay, I've been there. I do it all the time. So that's just launched. It's weareoko.com.
So if you're someone who's interested in being a mentor or a mentee, they can go to...
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in being a mentee, you can just go and sign up. If you're interested in being a mentor, you need to sign up through your business, and that's to do with safeguarding. Although the platform's open only to mentees who are 18 and above, you do often get people who are, they're a bit more vulnerable than others, and so it's, all the mentoring is done through business. So you get your business to sign up, and then you can sign up through them.
Got it. Weareoko.com, right?
Weareoko.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
And finally, especially given the colour of the sofa you're on, it wouldn't be your story without mentioning your presidency of D&AD.
Yeah.
Any experience of how was that?
Yeah, that was an incredible experience. It was right when, D&AD is a global organisation and an amazing charity that helps progress, creative careers, and particularly with young people. But, all the money that comes in most of it was going in terms of going into progressing the careers of people in the UK. When I was president, there are some other amazing organisations around the world who all have the same aim as D&AD and work in the same way in their charities. There's an organisation called Curious in India, for example. And the year that I was there was very much about building those connections and doing joint partnerships where the money, for example, that you spend as an Indian agency could go towards helping young creative talent in India get a job in India. So making it a bit more circular, I guess. So I had an absolute ball. I spent a lot of my time traveling.
Amazing. Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah.
Sounds brilliant.
We'll come to the end
Yeah.
of your life story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
We
you.
will end with a little poem. First up, I'll just share the lessons from your life. And I think your story is a brilliant one for anybody who, really identifies as a creative person, but feels like, oh, therefore business is not for me, or I'm not a business person. You are like an amazing example for someone who's, an entrepreneur and an exceptional creative who has combined them and doing it at, as you said, one of the most respected and longest running agencies in the world. And I think that's super cool. And you've just shown throughout your life that resilience is amazing at getting you to amazing places, to not give up. It's okay to be different in a different environment. In fact, imagine you're on a pirate ship, go and have some fun. Life can be a cool, fun journey being a misfit.
Yeah.
Enjoy the process.
Yeah. It's all about the process.
It's all about the process.
All right, it's poem time.
Okay, so I create this poem based off what has been discussed
I
here.
didn't say this is so wicked.
So, careers can have you at ground level or flying high like a Chinook, while also not having to follow the path that you think you may need to do. It's okay to take a pivot. Throughout your career, you've been known as a creative thinker, but also a slacker and a lateral tinker. With the skills that we all have inside, you can be 1 in 8 billion. As long as you keep moving forward and don't ever lose your resilience. And if you stay yourself, that is half the battle won. As long as whatever you do it well and make it shine like the sun.
Oh man, that's superb. Am I allowed to clap?
Yes.
How I became. See you soon.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, cheers.
All right, we can stop the cameras there.
Man, you made me cry.